This week, I'm joined by Gaynor Turner, a brilliant businesswoman, podcast host, member of the She Is Courageous Collective, and founder of the online women's boutique Above the Clouds. She shares with me her story of building a business from scratch during lockdown, despite having no tech skills, no funding, and a whole load of challenges along the way. We talked about going all in. It's a really big part of the conversation. We talked about building resilience when nothing seems to be working. There's real honesty in this episode. And how Gaynor realised that focusing on what really lights you up can be such a game changer. She opens up about what's really hiding in your wardrobe. So we debunk the myths around wardrobe edits. And she shares what she's learned about empowering women to feel fantastic every single day, using the clothes they already own. Now, what I'm also going to say is make sure you stay right to the end, because I threw in a curveball question to Gaynor about manifestation, and she dropped a Coldplay story that you honestly couldn't make up. So let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome back to the She Is Courageous podcast. This week it's a guest week and I am absolutely delighted to welcome this week's guest, Gaynor Turner. Now, I have known Gaynor probably coming on for a couple of years now. I met Gaynor out here in Dubai. We've done a bit of work together. She is a member of the She Is Courageous Collective. She is an incredible woman and a fantastic business owner. Gaynor is the owner of online women's boutique Above the Clouds, which she's going to tell us all about today. She has taken that a step further in the last year or so and introduced incredible wardrobe edits into her business, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today because we're both really passionate about debunking some myths there. And she also runs her own podcast, the Above the Clouds podcast. Now, I'll obviously put links to all of that in the show notes, but let's hear it all from Gaynor. So Gaynor, welcome to the She Is Courageous podcast. Let me start there.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
It's so good to have you here. It really is. Now, I always start every podcast guest episode by asking the guest, I've just introduced you, I've just told that snippet, but actually what I would really love for you to do is to tell the listeners who you are, tell us about you. Now, let's go back a little bit. Tell us about Gaynor, tell us where she came from, where she is now, tell us about her business, tell us about her. Gaynor, tell us all about you.
Yes. Well, I've been in Dubai for 10 years. I always had sort of traveling feet. Even when I was younger, I always wanted to live by the sea, although I am actually from Birmingham in the UK. So, but I've always had sort of an entrepreneurial sort of spark about me. So even when I was 10 years old, I used to draw pictures and sell them to the neighbours.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah, or always sort of wanting to turn my skills into money or into a little business. So it was actually during COVID when I was working from home, but I just had a lot of extra time to sort of watch YouTube videos and things like that, and really sort of delve into, could I set up my own business? Could I actually create a business that was successful? And just started watching videos every single day, all sorts of videos. Um, and yeah, actually decided to set up my own online store. I've always loved the idea of having my own shop. I just love the tactileness of it, sort of having things to sell and put in bags and all those kind of things. That always appealed to me. So I thought, well, it seems a natural thing to actually set up my own online store, which was fairly sort of easy to do. I did a free course and just got started. And any spare time that I had, I was just building my website, which probably took about 7 weeks all in all. Not consistently, because that's quite a long time. Sort of got started and launched it, and did a lot of research online as to how to get a business license. And the information wasn't easy to find, but getting credit card providers set up. And I think I sort of learnt in those early days how to be resilient, because
Yeah.
the first sort of 5 credit card providers that I asked, they turned me down as a startup business. But
Right.
the next one said yes, and it was Stripe, which is one of the biggest ones. So I think I just learned very early on to not sort of take these knockbacks as a that's it, it's over. So yeah, so then after that, I was sort of delving into doing pop-ups and things like that, just showing people the clothing that I was selling online. realizing that a lot of people like to try things on for size. There's always that trust factor as well. You know, people want to sort of trust who they're buying from. So that was a great lesson to me in sort of, you know, having the confidence to sort of go out there and talk to people about what I was doing. And I would recommend that to everybody. And then it was probably around about that time that I started networking, which that at the time seemed terrifying, just walking into like a coffee shop. It was just a sort of morning coffee sort of event with ladies that I'd never met before. But it was the first time that I'd actually stood up in a room and, you know, sort of told people about what I did. And I was wearing one of my dresses and I was sort of telling people all about it. And just the lovely feedback that I had then just gives you the confidence to sort of do the next one. But I think saying your business out loud, all of a sudden it's not just you in a room anymore. It starts to sort of, you know, get the details out there.
Yeah.
And then this year I've actually introduced doing wardrobe edits. And the reason for that was very much I really wanted to help women to build their confidence. And I think my work sort of selling dresses and clothes to women, I just noticed over and over again these concerns that women had, or, you know, talking to me about sort of the clothes that they're wearing now or how they feel about their style. Just really got me thinking that I knew that I could help these women. And I think there's so much of our confidence hidden behind our wardrobe doors. And I think so many of us have clothes behind our wardrobe doors from, you know, the archives or sort of the old version of us from like 5 or 10 years ago that don't fit who we are now. So I think that just confuses us and can make us feel pretty lousy about ourselves when we go and, you know, get dressed every morning. So yeah, I've been absolutely loving doing that as well. So that started in January. And it just seems to be sort of snowballing. You know, I'm just helping women all the time now, and I'm absolutely loving it as well, sort of helping to put together sort of people's wardrobes, but actually using the clothes that they've already got. So it's not about sort of going out shopping for a load of new clothes. You know, often they've got the tools there. They just need a bit of help sort of you know, arranging it. So yeah, I'm in my element.
Bless you. I love how what you've done there with this wardrobe edit is kind of really responded to what you heard and what you saw and what you were, you know, what you were hearing from your customers, basically, is what started that, wasn't it? I love that you've responded and then created that. Now, just before we come all the way to current day and wardrobe edits, let's go back a few, if we can, okay? Because I love the way you're like, well, you know, I was just watching some, and this is how you kind of almost did this. I just kept watching these YouTube videos and decided, and I love the ease with which you've described that. And I also love that actually there was always clearly some entrepreneurial spirit in you, talking about selling pictures as a child. But if we can just go back to COVID days,
Yeah.
let's not go back to COVID days literally, but let's just talk about like if you just take yourself back to that moment. Was it as simple as you just said? You know, and I know it wasn't simple to make it happen, albeit you went for it. But, you know, what was the driving force for you to decide to take those first steps and start an online business? What was really driving the why you decided to do this?
I think for me was because I tried so many sort of little businesses over the years, but not given it my all
Right.
and not done the homework or sort of done it very haphazardly and just done it quickly because I've always been quite an impatient person. Uh, so just thinking, oh, I'll just set something up and um, but not done it properly, not dedicated my time to it or my energy. Um, so I just started thinking, sort of over COVID, what would happen if I dedicated all that I've got and focused on what I want to do to really, you know, create a business from scratch and make it a success. And I sort of knew at that moment, after watching loads of videos, and also the Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spank,
Yes. Yes.
watching a lot of her interviews, and she was saying that she knew she wanted to create something but didn't know what. Um, but just her, yeah, just her sort of how she started, and she had sort of nothing to begin with. And that's how I felt. I thought, I'm literally starting from scratch. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm prepared now at this time in my life, whilst I've got this extra time being at home, to actually do it. And then the more I discovered what I wanted to do, the more passionate I was about it,
Yeah.
because I love clothes, and I love helping people. And I for me as well, I don't like the thought of anyone not feeling confident, and I know that I can do something about that. So, but yeah, mainly it was basically putting all of everything that I've got that I know that I can do, and focusing rather than just things here and there.
But there it is. Okay, that's the power of focus, right? And I think we live in a world now where first and foremost, it is seen to be, or it's described to be really easy to start a business and go for it. And it kind of is, but it isn't. And I think what's so important about what you just shared there was you said, you know what, I just kind of decided to go all in. And actually, if I really went all in, what does that look like? Well, for you, that looked like really learning, not half-heartedly, not scattergun, saying, right, I am going to really study and pay attention to what the experts are doing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to give it the time and energy it deserves because I really want to make it work. And I just think that's so powerful and so admirable. But and yes, it's great that there was a positive to come out of COVID. Yes, you had the time. I just think it's a really, really powerful message you just shared there, that what was different this time, because you said, I tried lots of different things previously, but this one, I was like, I'm going to do this properly. But what I think is really important to mention, and I know some of this from our previous conversations, but I think it was really clear in what you just said as well, was doing it properly didn't mean you procrastinated, dealt with perfectionism, and didn't make it happen. And that's very different too, because I think a lot of people can tell themselves, well, I just want to make sure I'm doing it properly, when actually what they're doing is procrastinating and getting stuck in perfectionism.
Yeah.
So what for you was the difference? Like what was the turning point of really seeing things start to come to fruition for you?
To be really honest, it's probably been this year. So I say since COVID. I mean, that is sort of a long stretch, but yeah, up until then, I've stood at pop-ups and not made a single sale several times. I've had months go by of not making a single sale online. But I think the difference is now, because I've learned so much, and because I haven't run out of steam, and I haven't run out of steam because I keep listening to all sorts of podcasts, I read all sorts of books, and it takes time. And as long as you keep learning and figuring it out, and I think marketing has been a massive learning curve for me, because you could have the best business in the world, but if you don't know how to market it, it will never get off the ground. I think I was encouraged by all these different things that I've heard, and literally every time I'm in my car, I'm listening to a podcast that's going to teach me something. Um, and I just believe in my idea, and I know that it will happen. And I don't sometimes there's just something in you that knows that if you keep going, and I think the more you can listen to podcasts and things like that, it will give you the encouragement to keep going. Um, I forgot what your question was.
You've answered it perfectly, and I'm just gonna play back a
Good.
couple of things you said, because I think it's really important for people listening. Something you are really honest about, and you've just been so honest about, was there have been months where you took no money. There have been pop-ups where you didn't sell a thing, and you have kept going. Now, there's a couple of parts there. This belief, I'm going to come back to that in a second, because I know that's a really core part of you. But I really want to kind of just reiterate what you've just shared. I think we are so quick to firstly think we're failing if we're not making money quickly, if it's not coming really quickly, but also to, quite frankly, give up and change direction because it's not coming. And it's back to that piece, you decided, you got really focused, got really clear what you wanted to do. You went out to learn. You're constantly learning, which means you are not chopping and changing for the sake of chopping and changing, but tweaking and adapting when you need to tweak and adapt. And like you said, this year has really taken off for you. And I truly believe that's the cumulative effect of everything that you've done until this point. And yet you continue to invest in your learning and things. So I think that's really important, because we see, or we perceive, these overnight success stories. We think everyone else is doing so much better than us. I think we've all got to be much more honest. I've had months where I've taken no money. I've had, months where I've put out offers that nobody's taken. Just because I don't shout from the rooftops, hey, that one flopped, doesn't mean everything's a success, does it? And I think that's really important. So I love that you shared that. Now, let's come to this. You said, I just really believe. I believed, you said past tense, and then I believe in. One of the questions I haven't asked, and I'm now going to ask, is let's talk about the name Above the Clouds. So, where does the name Above the Clouds come from? Why Above the Clouds?
Well, originally, and this is very much down to your sort of tweaking ideas, because you mentioned about sort of being a perfectionist. Well, I'm not that at all. I don't mind sort of, not
A
doing everything.
fellow non-perfectionist, Gaynor. I love it. All right, we know we've got something. We know sometimes we could do with a little bit more of it, but it works for us.
Yeah, and improve as you go along, kind of thing. But the name actually came originally because I actually decided to design a travel line of passport holders, sort of little travel wallets, suitcases, and things like that. And I mean, that was a long slog. That probably took me the first year of my business, sort of figuring that out. So my idea was, obviously when you go on holiday, you fly sort of above the clouds, and that's where it all came about.
Love
And
that.
obviously things have changed now because, to be frank, there was no money in it. It would have been a very, very costly product to sell. And yeah, another learning curve. But I also wanted to introduce sort of, clothes for your holiday and things like that. So yeah, business has sort of pivoted sort of along the way.
And I think what I love about that so much is, firstly, I love the original idea of the name Above the Clouds, flight products, essentially, is what you said there.
Mhm.
But you have built Above the Clouds as your brand. And so, it's known, certainly out here, that Gaynor Turner runs Above the Clouds. And I think there's a bit of a message for everybody there. We can get quite in our own heads, can't we, about names of things, and most people don't care. Well, most people don't care anywhere near as much as we do about what something is called. What they're interested in is, what does it give me? What does it do for me? And actually, I think that whole Above the Clouds piece has then become so much more than it actually started out to be. If that makes any sense. So
Definitely.
yeah, and I love that your point there is, well, there was a learn, like I learned in that journey, but I didn't throw it all in the bin and start again. I just let it evolve.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. That
yeah,
that's
love
definitely
that.
been it.
I love that. So there were a few things you talked about. So you talked about networking, kind of wearing your own clothes, stepping into that, how you've responded to what you've seen and heard, and what you can now see, women really need and want. How do you? Okay, I've got this question in my head, which is, when you sell a product like you do to women like me, I'm one of your ideal clients. Let's be fair. In fact, you've done a wardrobe edit for me. We can talk about that together in a second. But we've always got ideas, right? We always want to tell you what we think we need. How do you stay focused? So back to this piece, you decided, you were really clear what you wanted to achieve. You went all in, you've evolved correctly in terms of response, but how do you stay focused so that you don't go back or you don't start diluting the brand, the offering? Because I'm sure people have got ideas all the time and want you to sell more products in the online boutique. How do you keep yourself focused on where you want things to go?
Think it is very much, I suppose, a confidence thing that you gain over time. You gain sort of conviction in what you're doing. And I think from doing, a few different things to begin with, you learn more about yourself and you learn sort of what feels right along the way. And I think because I've learned so much since the very beginning of sitting in my kitchen, trying to figure, and I'm not a tech person at all, but my own website, to who I am now, I've got real conviction, and sort of my focus now is to sort of helping as many women as I can to feel fantastic every day. But also, I still love selling clothes, so that's also a joy of mine. So now I have sort of women coming round, messaging me, sometimes over the weekend, popping round saying, "Can I try on some dresses?" Or, so really, those are the two main focuses. And obviously, my podcast just goes alongside that, just to sort of enhance what I do, really. But I say the
Yeah.
basic message of what I do is to help empower women and feel fantastic.
And you are so passionate about what you do. That comes through in everything you say and everything you do. If you could go back to 2020 Gaynor, would you do anything differently knowing what you know now?
Yes, probably quite a bit. And I think to begin with, I would figure out sort of the profitability of doing things a lot sooner. I know obviously when we've spoken before and you asked me about my numbers and I just kind of looked totally blank, I'm not sort of a maths whiz or anything like that, but the basics, the fundamentals of business, if you're not going to make money from it, don't waste your time on it. So yes, I would definitely, if it's not profitable, I would sort of stop doing that straight away. Um, in terms of everything else, I don't know because, for me, I think that the thing that took the longest over the start of my business was finding out the information to do what I wanted to do. And I'm not sure, mind you, with sort of chat GPT and things like that now,
True.
if only I would have had that sort of, 5 years ago. No, I think I've needed to sort of learn along the way, and I've needed to learn to be patient. And I too have watched videos of people saying sort of, overnight I had this many followers and I had earned this much, and it's all. I
So
think you learn a
glamorous.
lot of things along the way. So probably for me personally, I needed to go on a longer journey to teach me resilience and patience above all else.
Well, and I think what's really important about, firstly, I really appreciate your honesty there about like numbers, profitability. It's such an important piece. You don't have to be a maths whiz, but if you're going to run a business, either you need to or you need to have someone that's going to help you understand your numbers, right? And it's such an important piece, and I love that you're so honest about it, because I think so many women aren't honest about that because we're embarrassed to say I'm not close enough to the numbers, or I don't really get that stuff. It doesn't have to be difficult. We just need to know the absolute basics, because it's also very demoralizing when we are running businesses and not making the money we want to make. I think the other piece that's really important there, and it was interesting, I don't usually ask questions about, if you could go back and check until the end of a podcast. We're not at the end yet. But I guess what's really interesting for you is, you've quite rightly said, if you had not had the journey you've had, you probably wouldn't be as resilient. You wouldn't have the confidence you do have. And actually, you've built that wonderful skill of patience. Because I think a bit of impatience is good too, right? There's a sweet spot between the two. But you've used that word confidence a number of times, and I know the work you do is about helping women feel more confident. But confidence comes from repeated success. In fact, I think confidence actually comes from repeated non-failure, i.e. realising that if it doesn't work, it's okay. That's actually more confidence building sometimes than success can be. And you wouldn't have had any of that if you hadn't gone through everything you've been through. If that makes any sense at all. So I think that's a really important answer.
Mhm.
So let's wind it forward and talk about wardrobe edits, because I think there's a lot of myths about wardrobe edits.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of myths about wardrobe edits generally, about the kind of people that come and do wardrobe edits, particularly in Dubai. I think there's a bit of a myth about wardrobe edits, and I'd love to debunk some of those, and particularly here in Dubai, because one of my biggest fears, and I shared this with you really openly, was, and I've done a podcast about this, about my look, do I fit in Dubai? I'm not glamorous enough for Dubai. And then the fears that I had, and I'm not going to share those now because I'm going to let you talk about wardrobe edits in a second. But I shared with you some of the fears I had about having a wardrobe edit, and you were like, that's not what it is. So if we can just come back to, you heard very loudly and clearly from your clients, from customers buying from you, that this was a need. What was it you were hearing? What made you think, do you know what? I need to take this a step further and help these women with their wardrobes.
I think for me, it was because I could see them clearly, all these different women coming to me. I could see them clearly, but they couldn't see themselves the way that I could see them. So I saw so many women coming
Right.
to me and saying, "Oh, I like that," or "But I couldn't wear that," or "Oh, I love these on other people, but oh, I couldn't." And I didn't see them that way at all. And I just saw, because you see the whole picture, and I thought it's such a
Yeah.
shame that you would look fab in that dress, but you're not seeing it yourself. Um, so yeah, that was sort of the main thing. Women getting all in their heads about things, and I knew that I could help them and sort of bring, get them to see a more, um, I guess, in more perspective,
Yeah.
get to see them the way that I see them.
I guess it's the same. It's like everything, though, isn't it? We always see in others what one doesn't see in one's, like what they don't see in themselves, and other people will always see in us what we don't see in ourselves. You've taken that into the wardrobe piece. So for anybody listening, that's like, okay, they keep using this term wardrobe edit. What is a wardrobe edit? Describe wardrobe edits to us.
Yeah, I mean, basically everybody is different. Some people might be fantastically confident about putting outfits together, but their wardrobe's just a complete sort of mess. They haven't got time. They're so busy. So they may just need somebody to come and organize it to look all beautiful. I bring all my sort of matching hangers and very aesthetically pleasing, and just give them a bit of help organizing. But the large majority of my clients are people that have lost their confidence or maybe lost their sense of identity somewhere along the way. Sometimes it can be, something life changing. Maybe they've moved countries, had children. Maybe their body isn't the same as it was. Health challenges and things, or just sometimes the way us women are, where we just beat ourselves up, comparing ourselves to the older version of us, like 10 years ago. Um, so yeah, so for those women, I have a nice chat with them beforehand and just see sort of what their struggles are. Um, and then I basically look at what they have in their wardrobe. Always a good place to start is to declutter any of those things that, the dress from 10 years ago that you used to fit into, that you love. Um, not necessarily to get rid of them, but just put them away in a box and take photos of it so you know what's in the box and put it away. So it's not confusing you every time you go to your wardrobe or making you feel a bit sad. Um, so yeah, so we start off with decluttering. And then I sort of divide the wardrobe up into sections depending on their lifestyle. So if they work from home mainly, they'll just be sort of a casual, sort of working side of their wardrobe. And then sort of the more, if they tend to go out for coffees and the cinema, slightly more dressy clothes, or like I say, it depends on their lifestyle, or maybe a more glam. I did one girl's wardrobe where it was pretty much 90% glam and then a little bit of trousers and things because she was actually a teacher. So
Right.
the going the clothes were fantastic. But yeah, I basically look at all the clothes that they have, and I'm able to. I like to think of it as Zara because I'm a huge Zara fan. Um, Basically, create yeah, almost like a little Zara for each section using their own clothes. I just piece it together differently. And I'm able to do that because I get from them what styles they like. Is there anybody that they know that they like their style that they'd like to try? Just get a lot of information from them because I could put together what I feel is fantastic, but if it's not you, it's not going to work. So yeah, I basically sort of sort out and organize their wardrobe so that they're excited to get ready every morning, so that they're wearing clothes that feel good. And also wearing some of their nicer clothes more regularly, because I think we're all a fan of leggings, but I'm wearing some now.
I love your honesty.
But, it's just nice to sort of get dressed up or even just wear your nicer jewelry or just do those little things to start building that confidence and just feeling fantastic. So yeah, that's what I
So
do.
I love it. And there's clearly a need for it. I know they're going very, very well. So let's talk about some of the myths around wardrobe edits. And again, I could happily tell you what I thought, but what do you think what are some of the myths that you've encountered when it comes to these wardrobe edits?
Well, I think women feel very vulnerable. They probably don't stop and think about it, but suddenly when you think of somebody coming into your home in your sort of personal space, and I think so many women think you're going to be totally judged for having no style, and what are you doing with all these clothes, that sort of, aren't stylish. So I think that's a huge part of it because having somebody come in it may be an area where you don't feel confident. It's terrifying. But also, I think people think that they're going to have to spend a fortune, that I'm going to
Yeah.
come along and say, this all needs to go, and you need to buy a whole new wardrobe.
And, and I think I shared with you that that was what I thought a wardrobe. I mean, that's fundamentally what I thought a wardrobe edit was, and what I feared you were going to say. And I absolutely agree with that feeling of vulnerability. I mean, our wardrobes are in our bedroom. That is the most private space we have, right? We see into everybody's homes these days. That's the world we live in. You're seeing into mine, I'm seeing into yours right now. But rarely do we see into people's bedrooms, even those that are using bedrooms for offices still, not everybody's as fortunate as I am to have a room that they call their own office. But, we get blurred backgrounds, etc., etc. You are literally physically stepping into probably the most private space in someone's home, and to a woman, the next most private space, which is her wardrobe. And I absolutely felt that feeling of, what will she think? And therefore, what will she not say? Because I know, not for a second did I think you would be rude to me, but did I fear that you might be thinking, oh my God, I don't know where to start here? Absolutely. And then, of course, as you said, I think that other big absolute myth was that you were going to say, well, basically, Shelley, we need to start again. And so for anyone listening, that's not what wardrobe edit is. And I'm sure there are some which will be like that, but that's not how you position. You said it earlier on. I loved the words you used earlier. You said we have the tools. And actually, I think one of the things I really love about the way you've positioned this so far is you have a real passion for clothing. I know that. I've seen you out and about. The other part of this passion is about helping women feel fantastic. And what you're saying is, clothes are just a tool to feeling fantastic. Now, you're more passionate than them being just a tool in the literal sense. But fundamentally, we do give a little bit too much power sometimes to clothing, don't we? And what you did in my wardrobe was that piecing together that you just described. Like when you left, I had 4, 5, 6, 7 outfits. In fact, multiples, because it was almost like a capsule where you were like, well, this top and that top would all go with those trousers. And at one point you were even putting a handbag over the hanger and saying, you could wear that, use that handbag with them. It was everything I wasn't expecting and more. And I mean that in only a good way. Is that something you hear often from people?
Yes, yeah, I do. And that's sort of the icing on the cake for me, just seeing. I think women are really surprised. I think that women are really relieved once they've spent sort of 5 or 10 minutes with me, they
Yeah.
realise that I'm not there to judge anybody, and I'm there to help, I'm there to sort of be your friend, and get you feeling good again, because I think we all deserve that. And I think as women, when we feel good, it just factors into every other area of our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. I also love that. I mean, the words you used earlier, I want people to feel excited to get ready, and I want them wearing nicer clothes. Now, I love that you were honest and said, I've got a pair of leggings on today. I'm in a pair of scruffy jeans down here too. So we're all good, right? But actually, I think that piece, I don't know if it's just our generation, but did you have instilled in you as a child, that's for best, you have to keep that for best, or that's a going out outfit, they're your going out shoes and things. And because we don't, because we live lives so differently now, we could end up with an awful lot in our wardrobes that never gets worn because it was for that one thing. Whereas actually something you really encouraged me to think about was, that doesn't have to be, but with that, pair that with that, and actually it no longer feels like you're overdressed to be in the office type thing. But also gives me reason to wear things that, feel a bit nicer. And I absolutely love that. What's been the most surprising, I'm not going to ask you for dirt on anyone's wardrobe, so just for clarity on that, I mean, you can tell me if you want to, but I guess what's been the most surprising reaction you've had in the wardrobe edit experiences?
Probably, I can think of somebody who didn't think that she was that bothered about clothes at all. She very, very busy. Just wasn't sort of overly interested in clothes. And I think just seeing her reaction at the end of it, where she was almost like speechless at how excited she was with her wardrobe. And that for me, it was just lovely to see that I'd been able to do that for her. Um, and yeah, it's just that alone is sort of what makes it something that I really, really want to focus on. But the excitement as well,
Yeah.
I want women to feel excited about what they're putting on rather than overwhelmed by it or not feel good at what they're wearing. To feel good every day, whether or not you just pop into the shops or whatever, putting on something that feels really good, it's so empowering.
And I think that's, I'm not sure how to word this question, but I've got something going through my head around, like, why do you think clothing has so much power over us? So even here you say, just putting on something to go to the shop that makes you feel good. And that's the core of what you're talking about, isn't it? Like, it's not about what you wear, it's about how you feel. And I guess it's that piece where everybody feels different in different things. Like, if you feel great in a pair of leggings, wear a pair of leggings. Don't feel you can't wear a pair of leggings. And if you don't feel great in a pair of leggings, then don't wear them because everyone says you should. But why do you think clothing has so much power over us?
I guess because it really expresses who we are. It almost tells everybody without you even having to say anything. It's an expression. So if you're wearing things that, you know, don't make you feel good, then your whole posture, your energy, the way you come across is going to be affected by it, whether or not you realize it. And sometimes it's only by us actually thinking about it. You think, gosh, yeah, if I just put on, a saggy t-shirt or something, and then if I bump into someone I know, how does that make me feel? And you're absolutely right. I don't believe it matters what you wear as long as it makes you feel good. I'm not
Mm.
someone that will try and force you to wear something, like I was saying, sort of that I think you should wear or that I think looks fantastic. If you feel fantastic in a pair of leggings, then that is exactly what we're aiming for. Because your opinion means more than anybody else. It's just how you feel.
And I think that's really important. And where you come from in the wardrobe edit piece is, I'm not coming in as a stylist. I'm not saying, and I know you do, and what you did brilliantly was you talked about like textures with me and what to wear with certain things. But what you're not saying is that this is your shape, this is what you should wear. What you're saying is it's all about the how you feel. Yeah.
Very much so.
If someone were listening right now and they're thinking, do you know what, when she was talking earlier on about standing in front of my wardrobe but don't feel good every day, I don't wake up excited to wear, to get dressed today any day, what would be the first piece of advice you would give them? What would you say someone could do for themselves to start taking the right steps?
I would definitely say remove the things in there that you haven't worn for sort of the last 2 years maybe, and you don't have to throw them away or donate them. Just pop them in a box, like I was saying. Just get them out of eye view because without you realizing, it's really confusing your identity. So you may sort of feel sad that you can't fit into that dress anymore, or that may sort of belong to a version of you that your life was completely different then. And it either way, it's still confusing. If you don't wear it anymore, it's confusing you. It's taking away your clarity in who you are today. So what I really want women to do is own who they are today and feel fantastic in who they are now. So decluttering, I think, is a fantastic place to start.
I think that's such a great. And actually, I hadn't thought about it the way you just described it. In that, it being there. Just take it away from eye view because it being there is it's almost like subconsciously it's creeping in. And you used that phrase a couple of times. That old version of you. As you were speaking, I found myself thinking about you're right. Like sometimes clothing can have a memory attached to it that might not be the best memory. I might like the piece of clothing, but it might be attached to a point in my life or a memory of life that isn't something I like, let's say. I hadn't thought of that until you just said that. In fact, I think I've got a piece of clothing in my wardrobe, even though we did the declutter, where I've probably still been holding on. So it's really interesting, isn't it? Just kind of what you've sparked there.
Mhm.
If you could give any advice, so not necessarily wardrobe edit specifically, but to fellow female business owners, now whether this is about wardrobe, whether this is about how you feel, or whether it's just about being a businesswoman, what would be your number one piece of advice to a fellow female founder?
I think once you've got the clarity on your idea, um, basically just to keep learning and don't get disheartened because nobody ever said that setting up a business was easy. And if it was meant to be easy, then everybody would do it. Um, Keep going and believe in yourself. And I say, if you make mistakes, you make mistakes. Richard Branson makes mistakes all the time publicly. You're going to make mistakes, but you owe it to yourself if you have an idea to do it and just keep going. And I say, just don't expect it to happen overnight, but just keep plugging away at it, keep learning, and yeah, you will definitely get there.
Do you think, have you always had this resilience? I've just, that word's just come back to me as I was listening to you there. That, I mean, that is true resilience. Everything you've just described is absolute true resilience. Have you always had that? And where do you think that comes from for you?
To be honest, no, I haven't had that, and that's I've had it since starting a business, and I think the reason why I didn't go the all the way with my other businesses is because I didn't have resilience, and that's the massive thing that I've learned. I think COVID probably taught us all
Oh,
resilience
yes.
without realizing it. Um, but yeah, I've learned it literally in the last 5 years, and now that I've learned it, and to sort of keep going with things, because I was very much full of enthusiasm for all different things that I've done over the years. But like I say, getting my focus behind it, and yeah, the resilience to sort of keep going.
I love that. And actually, that's really interesting, isn't it, to say, I don't think I have always had that resilience. It's come from running a business. And the more I have, the more I build, the more I build, the more I have. Like, that's the message, people that are listening. Let's talk about your podcast as well. So the Above the Clouds podcast, it's very much feel good. You tell us the story of your life, really, like what's going on for you. Where did the idea to start the podcast come from? Yeah, tell us a bit about your podcast.
Well, that again sort of shows an example of sort of how things can pivot over time and develop. But I literally had the idea because I thought it's a free way of marketing my business and telling people about what I'm doing. But yeah, sort of over time, not that long into it actually, I just thought I've got so many things to tell people about and so many experiences that I've had. And I'm always a big cheerleader of people, and wanting people to go after their dreams and everything. And I think the more I did it, I found fun ways of sort of discussing different topics and bringing in life examples. And yeah, overall it's basically become a sort of podcast about empowering people is the basic message behind most of the episodes. And then I'll have episodes in there about when I went to California, and like you say, basically my life. But there's a lot of episodes in there about my business, and funny lessons that I've learned, or sort of ways to sort of teach people things as well. So it's basically me in a podcast and my life.
And look, I mean, again, you're so right. I mean, podcasting is a free marketing tool, right? But it comes at a cost, and there's the input to it. And I think one of the things that you almost downplay for yourself, so I'm going to build you up. You describe these things with such ease, but actually it takes resilience, confidence. It takes determination and consistency, and you continue to do those things consistently. So, as a fellow podcaster, very similar reasons for starting. I wanted to, get out to more people, the difference that working on your mindset can have. But there's effort that goes into these things. And I think that's where I love how honest you were about, I didn't make loads of money in the first year. It wasn't an overnight success. There's been months I've not sold anything. There's been days I've stood at a pop-up and not sold anything. But I keep going. Interestingly, I was listening to Denise Duffield-Thomas, her podcast this morning while I was out for a walk. And she'd said, I've been doing this now for nearly 20 years. And for the last 15, I've shown up. I've done a podcast every single week. I've done an email every single week. I show up on socials. And she said, actually, because they were talking about like AI. And she was like, yes, we have all these new tools, but at the heart of it, we still need to be human. And you cannot take away human determination, human consistency, human this. And the cumulative effect of all of those is what gets us the results. And you are sitting here as a perfect example of that, because that cumulative effect of the last few years is what's giving you the results you're absolutely deservedly reaping right now. I always kind of wrap up the podcast. Actually, before we wrap up, Gaynor, there is a little subject we've barely touched on, and I think it's important we bring it in. Because when I think about you and Above the Clouds as well, I think about another subject that you're very passionate about, and that is manifestation.
Oh,
And
yes.
interestingly, and I feel like I can't wrap up the podcast before we have a quick manifestation conversation. So you are a big believer in manifestation. And as any of my listeners will know, I believe in manifestation too, but not necessarily in the same way as everybody else. Let's just talk very briefly, if we can, because I feel like we would be doing a disservice to Gaynor and Above the Clouds if we didn't talk about manifestation for a second. About your beliefs around manifestation, why you are so passionate about manifesting, and some of the examples you have of some of the things that you 100% believe that you have manifested. Do you mind if we just talk about manifestation for a second?
Don't mind at all. No, it might go on for quite a while though.
Well, I'm gonna pull you in if I need to, but I think it's really important because I remember this. We've had this conversation a few times, and it's one of those, manifestation when it comes to mindset, which is of course what the She is Courageous podcast is all about. Courageous mindset. You have shared multiple examples today of your courageous mindset, that resilience, that's courageous, that that keep going through the knockbacks. But we also have to talk about manifestation when we talk about mindset. So, Gaynor, tell us your take on manifestation.
Well, I learnt about it again during lockdown. I was watching one of my favourite YouTubers, and she was talking about how she'd basically manifested getting 100,000 views on one of her episodes. And she recommended reading The Secret book, but she didn't go into it any more than that. So I thought, oh, well, that's worth a read. So I ordered a copy. And then basically decided to put into action straight away. I was a big doubter. I thought, how on earth can manifesting be a real thing? It's like somebody's got a wand in this day and age. How can it be a real thing? But the thing that made me want to give it a go was that Reese Witherspoon is a big believer in manifesting. Kate Winslet is, Ollie Watkins, from Aston Villa, my son's favourite team. Big people are standing up and saying it really works. So I thought, well, if it works for them, then it's worth a go. So I decided to try. I thought if I'm going to try and manifest something, it's going to have to be something big so that I know I've manifested it. And Coldplay were coming to Expo. And obviously everybody in Dubai wanted to go to Expo and go and see Coldplay. And I did all the things, I wrote it down. I told people that we're going to see Coldplay, me and my family. Didn't have any tickets or anything, but I said we're definitely going to get into the concert. I even promised my son, which is really bad. But I thought, because it says in the book, you've got to 100% believe in it, invest, put your energy into it. So I thought, well, if I'm going to really believe it, I'm going to tell my son, which I would never normally advocate. And yeah, the day came that the tickets went on sale and the website just kept crashing over and over again. But I'd also heard about how the universe will test you as if you're not going to get what you've asked for, just to really test your belief. So I thought, well, okay, well, that's just a test. But yeah, basically when the website came back on, all the tickets had sold out. So I thought, oh, I'm going to have to tell my son that we didn't get into the Coldplay concert. But something in me told me to keep going. So I thought, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to email Chris Martin and ask for tickets. I'm going to do everything that I can. And I said to my family, let's just go to Expo on the day that they're going to perform. We won't, we may not be able to get in there, but let's just go. At least we'll be closer. And anyway, the concert started. There were thousands of people there. You couldn't even get anywhere near a screen. The queue to actually get in was just ridiculous. And I still kept believing that we were going to get in somehow. Something is going to happen. And yeah, so the children were getting really crushed and everything. And we decided to go for a little walk. And we said, why don't we just walk around the back, see if there's somewhere a bit quieter, more space to see them. We actually went round I think it was the back of the venue when everybody else was at the front that was standing outside watching it on the screens. And we were one of only 7 people standing there at these barriers. And so we were watching it on the screen and I was thinking, okay, maybe this is my manifestation, we can see it. And then the security guard pulled back the barrier and said, go on in and let me and all my family in. And what's more is as we were walking down there, the song that Coldplay were playing was My Universe. So I was like,
oh,
okay.
I've got goosebumps. Oh my God. Right. Okay. So I've not heard that story. I've heard other stories and we won't go into all of them. But when you were talking, And I think this is why I felt it was really important to bring in this manifestation conversation, because I know, we've talked about this before. I know you are a huge believer. And like anything, one believes more when one has evidence, right? And that story itself is your evidence, okay? And there may be people listening to this going, yeah, right, that's fine, okay? That is your experience and therefore became your first piece of evidence as well. But what's really important was you said, you know what I read about, what I was clear on was I had to 100% believe it could happen. I had to have absolute conviction. I had to talk as if it was a done deal. And then the universe will test you. And I found myself thinking about your own description of your business and starting your business. And you've said all the way through, I absolutely believe in my business. I absolutely believe that I can do this. I might not have always got it right. And I've had some knockbacks. It hasn't been easy. But ultimately you have created and continue to create the very business that you want to now. And whilst we might have some slightly different views on how some of this manifestation works, at the core of it, what we are both very clear on is you have to believe. You have to believe that it can happen, because if you don't believe it can happen, then it's not going to happen, whatever it is. You have to roll with the punches that come at you, because they will, because nothing is a straight line. Nothing is easy. Nobody actually just says, hey, universe, can I have it? It appears in their lap. But you also have to take the action. And what you just described in that Coldplay story was all the different things you did, because you believed that if I do these things, one of them will pay off. Something will pay off and I will get. And that is what manifestation, but also what business is all around. You've got to absolutely roll with the punches that will come along. But just because you believe it's going to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen easily. But you've also got to take the action, and you've got to take inspired action, different actions. You can't just do what everyone else does. You can't just do what you've always done. Manifesting means to bring to fruition, right? And your story, whilst incredible, is just a brilliant example, though, that along the way you believed you would. There was some testing moments, and my God, did you think differently to get where you wanted to get to? But you got it. That is where then we come back to total alignment of what manifestation is. So thank you for sharing. I'm so glad I asked that question, because that is a brand new story. Gaynor, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I adore you. I love the work that you are doing. I love how it's evolved into the wardrobe edits. I'm going to close with one final question for you, actually. If you could go back to younger Gaynor, before COVID, maybe Gaynor who kept trying all these different businesses, what would you say to her now, knowing what you know now?
I would say, which would have saved me years and years, to believe in myself, because that was what I didn't have. I didn't have any belief. I wanted it. I wanted success. I wanted to sort of, be doing something incredible. But deep down, I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think I was intelligent enough or driven enough or talented enough. I would have saved decades.
And I've got to ask there's a second question to that. So if someone were listening saying, well, that's great, but how do I even start believing in myself? What did you do that helped you start believing in yourself? How did you start believing in yourself?
For me, podcasts were a massive part, and reading books, reading inspiring stories, and realizing that some of these hugely successful people that you look up to were just like you. They weren't like that to begin with. They've learned, they've been prepared to do it, but they believed in themselves.
I guess it's one of those real kind of, if they can, why not me? I've asked this question before. I've probably got another podcast episode somewhere on this. Why not you? That's a great, that in itself can start to flip belief. Because if someone is listening right now and saying that's brilliant, and I'm so pleased for Gaynor, but how do you just switch on believing in yourself? You don't just switch on believing in yourself. You have to start asking yourself different questions. Why not me? If they can, why can't I? Look at go seek the evidence. If you haven't got your own, go look at other people's evidence. So hopefully that is helpful to anyone that's listening that might have just thought that too. I'm going to say it again. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute delight to hear more of your story, to really debunk those myths around wardrobe edits. We will put all of Gaynor's contact details into the show notes. If you open your wardrobe and aren't excited about what to wear, but actually worse than that, close it again in dread because you just don't know where to start, I strongly advise reaching out to Gaynor and having a chat with her about how she could start to help you how she can come and help you with that wardrobe edit. I love your attitude. I love that belief you have in yourself. I love the resilience, that confidence, and that you've built patience too, because there is a bit about having just spent 2 weeks in Japan, where patience is a virtue, they say. There's definitely a skill in having some patience, but peppered in with a bit of impatience makes things happen. Gaynor, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. We are absolutely over the moon that you joined us. Thank you very much, Gaynor Turner.
Thank you.